Hello, everyone, and welcome to our bi-weekly cert-manager meeting. Today is the 22nd of March, and we have 3 items on our agenda. First item is about the AWS private CA issuer, issue 252. Hamid, go ahead.
Hey, so we got this issue cut against us, I think it was a couple of weeks ago. We got around to testing it today. It's concerned with the sort of securing ingress resources feature. So I'm sure you all are familiar, but there's a feature based on cert-manager where if you have an ingress, go ahead, sorry.
Just to add that annotation is not meant to work with cluster scoped external issuers at all. It's just meant to be as a shortcut for cert-manager cluster issuer, and they should be able to do everything that they want to do with the issuer annotation.
Okay.
So there's no need for them to be using it for like external. This is not meant for external issuers at all.
Okay, so that's what I figured. So to get my head straight here, like they can use issuer or cluster issuer, cluster issuer only for the supported ones, but with the issuer annotation and the kind and group, they should be able to do everything that they want to do. That's now, even if they specify the cluster issuer in the issuer field, yeah, it's like potentially a little bit confusing for them, but it's not like a problem per se.
Exactly. Like the cluster issuer annotation is only so that you can easily use the cert-manager cluster issuer without having to also specify the kind of cluster issuer, basically. It's just as a shortcut that way. It's not, and I agree with you that it's confusing. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, and the other question I had was, so what out of curiosity, what is meant by like out of tree issuers? Like, I guess the PCA issuer is considered out of tree, but what's like specifically meant by that term?
Everything that's not in the code base.
Sorry, like for example, on this annotation, right? Like on the kind annotation, right? The kind of an external issuer resource, for example, AWS PCA issuer. This is only necessary for out of tree issuers. What do you mean by like out of tree in this case?
Everything that's not in cert-manager code base. So like the kind that is not issuer or cluster cert-manager.io issuer or cluster issuer.
So all external issuers, basically, right? We use it as a synonym. But like out of tree issuer and external issuer is the same, right?
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so like, and I think the 4 or 5 that you have, I remember it's like Venafi, Vault, Acme, and there was like so anyone that's not one of these ones that are like kind of external issuers, you always need to use kind and group. And kind and group don't work with the cluster annotation, so just use the regular issuer annotation.
Exactly. I do think there was also like a flag to specify a default, in which case you may not need to use the kind and group but I would verify that. I think there was a cert-manager flag for this as well, because we default to our own cert-manager.io group, and we default the kind to issuer if you have specified issuer name annotation, or cluster issuer if you have specified cluster issuer annotation.
Okay, and you can set this on. Yeah, I see it. It's in the bottom of the. It's like, I think you're referring to this. The optional configuration. So you would put this on the. Yeah, I'm just reading this bit about.
Yeah, if you know that you only want to use cert-manager, for example, with PCA issuer, maybe it's easier for you.
Okay. Entry issuers share the same CRD, right? It's not that for Venafi entry or CA entry, we have a different CRD. We share the same CRD, so that's a CRD that we default to. Just the issuer was called like issuer, and then group is cert-manager.io version 1, something like that.
Oh, wait, was that a question to me? Sorry,
No, I just was trying to explain how it works.
Yeah, no, okay, no, that makes sense. No, that makes sense to me. Like I didn't realize you could you could kind of set it up on the set these configurations, and then you don't have to specify it for the each ingress. That makes sense to me. Okay, yeah, I'll kind of put this back to the issue. So in summary, this is kind of by design. It's not really something we and they can achieve everything using the regular issuer annotation. It's not really something we need to fix. It's kind of a by design type of thing. I'm okay with that explanation. I'm just confirming.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, there isn't really a way for us in the code to tell if it's a cluster scoped issuer, if somebody specifies some external type.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm not. I guess we could document this maybe more clearly somewhere. And I think somebody actually opened an issue about this thing somewhere. And there's an issue already documented that the cluster issue orientation is only meant for the cert-manager in-tree cluster issuer.
Yeah.
So yeah, that needs to be documented. So that could be maybe an action item for this thing.
Okay. Yeah. No, I think that's fair. Yeah, because I think when the funny thing is that even in your documentation for ingress, you use the PCA issuer as the example, which I think is kind of cool as an aside. But I think if a novice user of cert-manager, right, might look at the supported annotations, they're going to look at the cluster issuer, and then they're going to say, okay, I want to use the PCA cluster issuer, so I'm going to use that one, and then I'm going to see the issuer in kind in the group. But if they specify the kind and group, it's going to fail. And if they don't specify it, it's also going to fail. They have to use the issuer, but that's not intuitive, right? I think what you said about specifying that the cluster issuer is only useful with the with the known the non-external issuers, the internal ones. I think that makes sense. Maybe even just another line or footnote on that page is fine, I think. I mean, I'll leave it up to you, but I think that's the right thing to take from here.
Yeah, we could add a warning or something like that. I think it's an easy food gun.
Do you have the link to? I'm going to try finding it. Do you have the link to your? Is that just an issue on your GitHub, the one you mentioned about?
Yes, I will just link it. It's a very recent one as well, because somebody ran into the exact same issue. They were trying to do it with some external issuer.
Is it this one 5872? I think.
Exactly.
Okay. So it's okay, that makes sense. Okay, I'm sad. I'm good for this issue. Yeah, I think thanks for the discussion.
Thank you for joining us. Okay, what's the next item on our agenda? Irbe, it's your item.
Sorry, is it my item?
Yes.
I think you had an unfortunate coughing fit just as you were saying that.
Yep. I heard him saying your item and nothing else. Cool. I could maybe share my screen and go through it. I don't want to make it too long, but I wanted to discuss this because it kind of requires agreeing on an approach that is different than was originally intended, although what is originally intended is not actually working the way it was intended with regards to the certificate requests denied conditions. So I will share my screen and I will open the issue.
Just note that your screen will be on the recording, right?
Yes, let me quickly close everything that I don't want to share. Cool. Cool, so can you see my screen? Yes.
I can see. Yeah. Yep. All good.
Is it too small?
It's legible for me.
Awesome. Let's assume you are the majority. Okay, so the problem is basically what should happen with denied certificate requests, whether they should be retried or not. And so whether they should be denied with an exponential backoff or should just stay in some kind of pending state in cluster. And so the problem is that I think when this was originally designed, the assumption was that they will not be retried except for some like. They will not be retried unless the issuer has set them explicitly to failed, which our entry issuers don't do, and like also not the ones that we are aware of where we actually change the code. But because there's like a race condition with the issuing controller and like the issuers, as I kind of like wrote up here, it's like a little bit complicated. It's actually not how it works. They always get retried with exponential backoff because it just, or always, or at least always dev observe, because again, like the issuer doesn't manage to update the ready condition soon and quick enough, so like the issuing controller already sets the whole issuance to failed. And that's kind of inconsistent, and it's like the same problem if so this is a problem if like if the if the certificate requests are denied and like the issuer is kind of compliant and it doesn't issue the certs for denied. So in this case, there is the race condition, and like in most cases that was observed, we actually do retry, although this isn't the intention. And like kind of in the code, depending on like how quick the issuer is and how quick our how quick the cert-manager controller is, it could behave differently. Either it would get retried or it would be like stuck. And then again, like depending on that, users would need to do different things if they have fixed the reason why it was denied, such as like fixed policy config. So in case of the retry, if they in case if the issuance is failed, then basically if you like hit this path, then it gets retried. And if you have fixed your policy config and you want to retry, you just do CMCTL renew. However, if it's stuck, then like the only thing you can do is to delete the old certificate request. If you have, again, like if you have fixed the reason why it was denied, which like by say fixing policy config. So it's kind of inconsistent. And it's kind of the same case if it's like a non-compliant issuer that will actually issue the cert, even though it's denied the request. Again, there will be like a race condition, and depending on if the issuer kicks in first and it kind of manages to quickly issue and like update the ready condition, will actually like will succeed it. And otherwise, if the issuing controller kicks in first and it just sees that it's denied and has not yet been issued, then it's going to fail the issuance. And then again, like it's inconsistent. So like my suggestion is that we just should make it so that it works in one straightforward way, like that there isn't a race condition. And basically, there's like two things we could do. One is we just, for every denied certificate request already in cert-manager issuing controller, we just fail that issuance and we retry it with exponential backoff. That would be one way how to do it. And the other way would be just to like ignore the denied condition completely in the issuing controller and just put it up to the issuers to either set the certificate request to failed, in which case it will be retried, or set it to whatever, in which case it will be stuck. But at least it will be consistent. I see that there's like a raised hand. Who is that?
That's me, because I don't yet fully understand it, I think.
Go for it.
First thing I would like to understand is it's not possible to go from denied to approved on one certificate request, right?
No.
Is that? Okay, so you have a decision made on that certificate request, and that doesn't change.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the decision is made in the approval condition, is that correct? How does that condition, what's the name of that condition?
What decision?
Like the approval policy component sets a condition on the certificate request, right? Exactly,
but this problem is about what happens in cert-manager code base when basically in the final step, when we look at certificate requests that already has been denied by whomever, and we want to understand whether we should fail, like make a kind of terminally fail the issuance, in which case it gets retried, or just do not. And it depends on the interaction of the denied condition and the ready condition of the certificate request. And in this case, the denied condition will be set by the approver, and the ready condition will be set by the issuer.
And so this is for all certificate requests, not just the certificate requests that use the cert-manager issuers, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Because my issuer implementations, I've always been setting the readiness condition to false after I got a denial.
So the only, like, in the cert-manager code base, we only consider ready condition false with the reason failed as like terminal failure. And this is not what we set in the. This is not what we set in entry issuers. This is probably not what you set, and also not what other external issuers set. However, we also in the code, we kind of have to think about like non-compliant issuers. So we also check if it's denied and has no ready condition. And in this case, we fail issuance. And because this check actually always happens to run before your issuer or any other issuer has set the ready condition fail, we actually always fail it anyway, because there's like a race condition. So one of the suggestions is to remove that check and completely rely on issuers.
Mm-hmm.
And in this, and this will have to like the kind of maybe like, well, this will basically mean that it will be stuck. It will not be retried. If you are a user who has like, I don't know, maybe if it got retried, if it got denied because of any reason such that, I don't know, your policy template somewhere externally was misconfigured and you reconfigure it, you'll have to do manual steps to kick the retry. And you'll have to delete the old certificate request. So it's a little bit clumsy for retry. This is one of the alternatives how to fix it. The other one is just to always fail and retry when it's denied and not care about what the issuer sets for ready condition.
I'm kind of looking right now at what I'm doing in my code. There is this.
It doesn't really matter what you're doing in your code right now, because there will be a race condition between the cert-manager code base and your issuer. So it doesn't actually matter too much.
But if I don't set the readiness condition, there won't be a race condition. Is that correct?
Yeah, but again, it doesn't really matter because there's a race condition with all the internal issuers already as well.
Yeah.
Like there isn't.
Okay. Yeah, it's kind of hard to make all these issuers consistent, I think. Well, I guess in this case, the easy solution is just to remove this thing from the, like, not from the issuer implementation, but from the other implementation.
I think that the change needs to be made in cert-manager codebase, and we have to, I personally think that we should just retry maybe with the exponential backoff like the denied ones, unless we want to rely completely on the issuers.
But like I've been quiet because I've been trying to process this and think about it. But like, so you've got your two alternatives, right? And you've named them A and B in the document. So A is ignore the denied condition. B is retry the denied condition, right? From my standpoint, I see in A that one of the cons is that we have to change entry issuers and external issuers. That just seems like a whole lot of work to me. I feel like A needs to be amazing to overcome B. Like it needs to really get us something extra to justify the cost of doing that. So it seems like B is just way better to me, but then maybe I'm missing something here.
So you could also leave it as is and like not change the issuers. That would mean that I think when I wrote it up, I kind of thought that retrying would be preferable. You could not change it, and in that case, it would always just stay stuck after being denied. I wasn't sure if that was what we wanted. And this would be currently, because again, like it gets retried, the issuance gets retried. If it has failed, it will be considered failed in cert-manager codebase only if the certificate request ready condition is false with the reason of failed. And there's also this edge case about it being denied and not having a ready condition when it also fails. But ignoring that, it will be only considered failed in this case. And this is not what issuer said currently, but it is what I'm suggesting in the point A. Just because like it doesn't, I don't know. I guess like my concern was mostly, and this is Richard raising, that it is somewhat non-intuitive, that it's the fact that it just gets tried once, never gets retried if it has been denied, and feels like it would be quite easy for there to be like some kind of external, we have these external plugins and stuff like that for approval policy. It'd be easy for it to fail once, and if it like never gets retried, it's just stuck, and like there's no obvious like error messages. It feels easy for it to cause out. It just feels like it would be safer actually if it retried. To me.
I think like errors are handled differently. So errors don't result in denied status, right? But it could be that maybe you connect to an external approver and there it's first denied and then maybe the policy is changed and later it's approved. Like temporary networking issues, for example, I don't think those will result in a denied state. They will just result in nothing set in the approval condition because the approval will be failing.
Does that make sense? Yeah, it's a good point. I guess like mostly what I was thinking was that case that Richard has talked about a lot, using them an external policy plugin where maybe something was changed in the external system and the person in cluster didn't necessarily, or somebody running Kubernetes didn't necessarily notice that caused a denial.
Also, just if you change a simple approval policy, it still won't result in different policy evaluations, right? Well, for new certificate requests it will, but like for example, if you create a certificate and you request example.com as the NS name, but example.com is not allowed in your policy, and later you change the policy so it allows example.com, it wouldn't renew the certificate, right?
Yeah, but then that's exactly why you would want the retrial.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, you meant it like that.
Retrial is kind of necessary. Is that what we can agree on?
I mean, it's how good. Sorry, Ashley.
I think it will be helpful for how we've got it currently implemented, right? Like retrying is probably useful for most people. Like if I've written a certificate which will always fail policy validation in a cluster because the policy correctly says that I can't issue a cert for google.com and that it fails that validation, then retrying is just a complete waste of time. But probably the more likely thing is that I wrote my policy slightly weird. Like the happy path use case of this is that I'm a good faith actor trying to get my certificate issued and the policy accidentally excludes my certificate. That's probably more likely than an attacker getting their certificate denied. So retrying is probably better in that case, because as long as the attacker fails every time it's retried, which they will, then job's good. I feel like B is just clearly correct to me.
In Kubernetes, it's kind of common to retry stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, as I
If it
say,
doesn't work now, it might work in the future.
yeah, there's a situation where we know it will always fail every time we retry, but we, as cert-manager maintainers, can't know if that situation will arise in a cluster. But we do know that probably retrying is helpful to more people than not. And it, you can even make the case that if you're retrying a certificate request which will always fail, that will make more noise and therefore make someone more likely to notice it and fix it. So that's like, there's a feature for you as well.
Yeah, I mean, like my preferred is kind of also the retrying, and like again with the exponential backup, it would be basically like 4 times a day, I think, or something like that. Because first it's like after 1 hour, then after 2 and 4 and 8 and stuff. So it's not that often. And I mean, I guess you could say that, yeah, again, like basically what you said, Ashley. But if you know if you are concerned about not issuing, not retry, it's expensive or whatever, you just shouldn't have that certificate in the cluster as well that is then being denied.
Yeah, it's reasonable. It requires less work as far as I can tell. Like, it fixes an actual problem. It probably helps people when they're using policy. Like, it seems B to me as a clear winner.
But both A and B allow for retry, right? Your solutions?
A would allow for retry if you were to change all issuers to set so it would delegate that to the issuer whether it wants to fail issuance, and currently they don't do it, so we will need to change all the entry issuers as well as all the PR to all the out of 3.
So that's the thing that I think I do in my issuer, in the Venafi issuer, to drop some names here. I set this ready condition to reason denied.
No, reason has to be failed. That's like, yeah, not denied. I actually checked that the reason's failed. If it's denied, we do nothing. We don't, in the issuer control code, consider denied reason as like a terminal failure.
Oh, and so that's what you're talking about here? Consider denied condition to be a terminal failure? Is that what you're talking in B about?
I guess that would be an alternative of changing the issuer code, but yeah, you could do that. I'm not sure if...
Because here you're talking about the denied condition. It's a bit unclear to me if you mean by that the readiness condition.
Oh, sorry, yeah. No, that, like, I wasn't actually looking at right now the issue. Okay, I meant considering denied condition. I didn't realize you meant that sentence. I meant considering denied condition as like a denied condition being true as terminal failure in the issuing controller. So not the denied reason of the ready condition. So just in the issuing controller checking if denied condition is true and then failing the issuance and not even looking at the ready condition.
Okay.
Sorry, I know that all these conditions are a bit confusing.
So it's not common to set the readiness condition to denied. That's not something that everyone does.
No, that is all entry issuers at the moment, as far as I'm aware, do that. They set the ready condition to false with the reason of denied, just as you do, and it's supposed to keep the certificate request in like kind of like a stuck pending state, but it doesn't happen because there's a condition in the issuing controller where we actually check if the denied condition is true, but there's no ready condition, and in that case it fails issuance. And because this check races with your issuer setting the ready condition to false, actually, from what I've observed, we already always do. We seem to retry, at least in my experiments, because in my, when I'm experimenting, like, it just happens that this controller runs quicker, but it's not reliable like that, and it's not what was intended also. Does it make sense?
Still having some trouble understanding everything, I think.
Okay, let me quickly share my code.
And so if the reason is set to denied, does that mean that we retry, or currently we don't do anything?
Sorry, 1 second. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so like in the issuing controller, we have this condition that is meant to yeah, so you see, like, if the ready condition is not yet set, however, if it is denied here, we failed issuance. And because, so basically it means that if the certificate request is denied, however, your issuer has not yet set the ready condition to false with whatever reason you are setting, it's actually going to fail. However, if your so it's basically the race condition. So if your issuer has not yet set it, then will fail. However, if if you have set it, if you have set the ready condition to false, it's just gonna run through, like it won't catch any of these, and it's just gonna like remain pending. Like you'll basically hit this point. So what I'm suggesting is that we basically take out this if condition, if statement, and make it consistent. So if it's like denied, then we just fail, and that's it. And this is like I think like the always retry alternative from the issue. Does it make sense?
I'm fully convinced. Do that. Like, I've been wrong before. I may have missed something, but like A seems like a non-starter, and B seems like a clear improvement to me.
Cool. I mean, thank you, Ashley. Because it's like such an easy code fix. It's quite easy. I'll just make the PR, and if if somebody else complains, then we can talk about it more. But yeah, thanks for your input.
So that logic is only for the certificate status, right? It's basically setting the certificate to denied.
No.
No. I don't yet fully follow. I have to spend some time.
Basically,
reading it.
That controller looks at current certificate request, and depending on whether it considers it to be in terminal state, it fails issuance, which kind of completes that issuance cycle and allows to come to a state where, like, it's kind of re-queued for like next issuance at some point. Does that make sense?
I'll maybe just review your PR and leave my comments there.
Okay.
But it is quite interesting because I might have to alter the way that I'm doing stuff.
No, I don't think you have to alter. The way you are doing stuff is exactly like the standard way. We should also, like, I think that you do it exactly in the same way as we do in tree issuers. We should just document what the standard recommended way is. But now it actually also will not matter anymore if we always fail on denied. It won't matter what issuers do anymore.
Okay. It's an action item for me to look in more detail at this point. Ashley, you have the last item on the last item on our agenda.
I am. I'm going to see if screen sharing will work. I think it probably will. Hey, you should be able to see GitHub. So yeah, this follows on from the thing I've been talking about in our stand-ups in mornings, which is relating to what I've called Go module proliferation, which is that we add Go modules for our integration tests, end-to-end tests, and one for each of our binaries. This PR implements that and like passes CI and like does all of that good stuff. As I mentioned in the design document, which I linked in the notes, this comes from a hackathon that Tim and I did internally at Venafi. And this PR is sort of that, but with a little bit more done thing. Like every module needs a license file, for example. This PR looks very big. I'm aware of that. Most of the new lines are copying licenses around and like Go sum files being large, but the actual real show-stopping changes, well, not show-stopping, they're not stopping anything. The actual improvements, you see them in the Go mod files. So this one that I've got on screen now is the core cert-manager Go mod file. We remove a dependency that comes from tests, and a bunch of other dependencies, kubectl is notable, either get removed or moved down into indirect dependencies. So this is like the minimal possible change, really, to start moving in this direction. Well, this is minimal if we're doing it for every binary. We don't necessarily need to do it for every binary, but it seems worth it to me to do that. We could just do cmctl, for example, but I think we might as well do all of them while we're at it. Again, everything looks pretty much as you'd expect, but there are a couple of things to highlight. So one is that I've made every Go module not match the path of where the thing lives. That makes it very clear that it's changed because it changes import paths, which is actually pretty valuable for that to happen. It means that you can't have one of these new Go modules referring to an existing version of cert-manager. Not that it can anyway, because all of them have a dependency on the cert-manager package, because they all use cert-manager, obviously, these binaries, but that's replaced. And the key sticking point, really, with this approach is that this replacement directive will break anyone who tries to import this module. They'd have to add their own replace directive to point at cert-manager. That would be an issue, I think, if anyone wanted to import these, or if we told people they had to import these. For the binaries, I can't imagine why that would be the case. I think it's reasonable for us as maintainers to say, hey, you can't import the binaries, we don't support it. If you do, you'll have to hack, and if we break you again, we won't feel sorry about it. Like I think that's totally reasonable for the binaries, because at the end of the day, like the binaries are there to be built and shipped, and that's what their goal is. We're not trying to provide like an importable library for the Acme solver or whatever. I just don't see the need. What's maybe a little bit more fun is the testing stuff. I can't see any obvious external imports on package.go.dev for anything that is added to a module here. I don't think we'll break anyone by moving, say, the integration tests, which have many folders. I don't think we'll break anything by adding this Go module, which adds a new integration tests package, for example. This may be more difficult though. Like, I don't really know. Like I don't think it's unreasonable for us to do this, but I could believe that someone would think it is unreasonable. We've always said that we don't support people importing cert-manager outside of a few specific paths. So, that's fine. But I could believe that some people might be bothered by this, is kind of the main thing there. I don't really have too much more to say about it. What I'm kind of doing is putting it in front of people in this meeting with the idea that they're able to see it directly and like ask questions about it or whatever. I'm trying to move us forwards towards achieving something like this, because this will enable us to upgrade things easily, albeit it needs a little bit more work than this for it to be sort of easy to work with down the road and to stop a few potential issues that could crop up. Does anyone have any questions about it or anything?
Yeah, I just think it's awesome that you made a PR. I guess if we do merge it, it would be good to do it soon and update, because we have a lot of our own projects that import cert-manager. So it'd be interesting to see how it looks when we import it in, like the external webhook, for example, or wherever else we use the cert-manager client. So that would be like a good indicator of how difficult actually is. Because I guess all of those paths that we support, we actually have example projects that import them exactly in that way.
Yeah, and to be honest, if any of our sample projects break following this PR, I messed up and we should revert this and try a different thing. Like, I expect that none of them will be affected because they should only be importing this Go mod file, which is our core one, and everything that's still under there should not be affected by this. It's if someone was like doing something weird with cert-manager tests, or for some reason importing a binary, which we do in our tests, but I can't imagine how anyone else would be affected. This one here is the big one. This is the real win from this PR that happens to be on the screen right now. But yeah, I unfortunately I don't really know how to. I can't really think of a much better way of testing all of our own projects that import cert-manager than just going ahead with this, because otherwise you're going to have to like fork all of the repos and like point everything everywhere, and it's just going to get really messy. Like I think it's a safe thing to test, and worthwhile testing as well. That said, the other thing that is maybe worth saying is that in the hackathon that Tim and I did, we went one step further than this, and there are the issuers that are in the under package of the cert-manager repo. We made them a module as well, so that they were all contained in their own thing. So that gets rid of like the Azure SDK, the AWS SDK, which all things that we probably don't want to depend on in core cert-manager. Ideally, if you just want to import the cert-manager API APIs package, then you don't want any of that. But that's much more likely to cause a problem. I still don't think it will, but it's much more likely. And it's like this is still a win even without that. So I think my preference at the beginning was to try and do that as well. I think my preference now is to try this, and if this goes well, then also do that. Also do the issuers in a separate package, which I think is valuable and desirable and will make it much easier to maintain. It also makes it easier to split the issuers out from the controller component into a separate pod. But for now, I think this is big enough as it is to do this. There are also obviously updates to our CI pipeline to make sure that all the licenses files are up to date, all that kind of thing, which is what we do currently, but just it needs doing there.
Can you maybe quickly repeat why you made it such that the Go modules pod doesn't match the pod in the tree structure? For example, for the Acme solver binary, the module is Acme solver binary instead of CMD Acme solver.
Mm-hmm. So I did it mostly because it forces us to update anything in the repo which refers to the old path. You can't have it. So like this with the Acme solver specifically, I probably don't need to do this replace here. And if I had V111 here, it would work because nothing the Acme solver depends on has changed, and we could use the upstream already released cert-manager and everything would be fine. But I don't want to ever use that, because if we get to that point, that requires us to have a workflow where we make 2 PRs to change. Well, we have to make 2 PRs if we want to change both a binary and anything under package at the same time. So you need to upgrade package first and then upgrade the binary Go mod. And that's just a crap workflow. So the reason for these replace statements is really that it forces our CI environment to always test everything that's in the repo all at once. Whereas if we have to make 2 PRs, we have to make that first PR and you test it. But then the tests for Acme Solver after that first PR were running against a previous version of cert-manager. And like it just all gets messy. Like everything works out in the end, but we have to raise 2 PRs for everything, and our tests become less useful, I think. Or at least we're running tests that are not particularly useful.
Okay, but we can still use cert-manager /cmd /acme solve, right? Like currently you did this to make the refactoring easier and to make sure that there's no mistake. And now we know there's no mistake. So now we can use the actual path, because the problem that I see is if you import now CMD, well, I think if you now were to import this externally, github.com /cert-manager /acme solver -binary, I think that won't work because it won't resolve to this location because the folder is different.
But we can't import. No one can import that. This PR breaks that anyway. So,
well, otherwise you could import it if you add a replace statement where you say, okay, cert-manager has to be found like in this version, like you replace it with a certain version.
Yeah, but what's the use case of that? Why would someone want to be doing that?
I don't know, maybe they want to import Acme Solver binary.
But that's the thing. I'm trying to break that,
okay,
like in a way. Like at the moment, like someone who's importing cert-manager like that will be referring to a published version that we already have live, say 1.11.
Mm-hmm.
And that will continue to work because 1.11 won't change. But in 1.12, that import path will be broken, and they'd have to change it to this new import path to get the version in 1.12, and then it would still be broken because this version of cert-manager doesn't exist. And so they'd need to add a replace directive at that point and come up with something about it. So it kind of breaks, like it makes it more clear that something fundamental changed. Like what it will look like to them is that the entire command directory just disappeared, which is kind of what we want because we don't want them to be doing that. And the code changes, obviously, that we need to make this change are minimal. Like we could.
It might be a bit confusing to certain people that they see CMD Acme Solver and now it's Acme Solver binary. They try to search for that folder and they don't find it.
But that's just what Go modules are like. Like the main cert-manager Go module could be like this could say like abc.com/Keith, and like that would be a totally valid Go module, right? Like it's just like it might be confusing to people, but in some ways that's good because I don't want them to go and find this and import it because we're not supporting them doing that in any case. I'm not married to the idea of it, right? Like if it's a sticking point, I don't really care what this module line says, but there was certainly value in it when I was making this PR. And I think there's value if anyone does try to import this, that they will have to go digging to do it. Like it should feel wrong that they're trying to do it because it will not work on multiple levels that they're trying to do it. But again, like I don't think that person exists. I don't think anyone is trying to do this. And if they are, like, then they will speak up pretty quickly when this gets merged, and we'll hear back from them as to what we can do to support them. But I don't think anyone will be broken by this.
What would be interesting to me is see how this gets indexed in the Go package thing, like the website that indexes everything. Like, will these Acme Solver -binary modules appear there or not?
Yeah. Then, well, maybe if someone imports them, but like,
How do they import them?
Yeah, well, but that's the thing. They shouldn't be. Like my prior is that I don't care whether they do or not because I don't like no one should be trying.
Yeah. I mean, we could like change the whole module name to something totally different, like Go module local dash or slash Acme solver dash binary, something like that. So it's very clear that it's very different.
Yeah, cert-manager.io/Acme solver, but then I worry there about like other tools like trying to resolve that module path and failing. Like this module name will get you to the cert-manager repo on GitHub. Like that GitHub does find that there are submodules with weird names in and exposes that when go get or whatever queries for modules. It's smart like that.
But if you were to like put all the command code practically into internal, would that not help? Like still have just the one top level, but like would making internal / command / Acme solver with its own Go mod file, would that not help?
So instead of not matching the module name, we just put it in an internal folder?
I've not thought through, but like, would that not help? Would it solve it even? Like, not
Maybe.
having a top level Go mod file for the command Acme solver, but just having internal / command / Acme solver with its Go mod. Because I mean, if nobody should like I mean, a standard way how to make people not import stuff is by putting it into internal.
But then your module path will actually contain internal, right?
Would it? I thought
Well, the module path could be this still, couldn't it? Even if it lived in internal.
Okay.
But well, yeah. If the module path did include internal, that would probably stop people including it. But then, in this case, the module path doesn't include internal. Like,
but you can't import from internal. You just can't do it. So it would actually achieve what you want to do.
I'd not thought about it. I'm honestly, it needs more changes to do that. For example, the build steps for all of our stuff needs to change to account for there being new modules. Like you can't, while you're in one module, you can't build another module if you're already there. Like Go complains about that. But so like moving it from CMD would like there's loads of little changes that need making. I'm not sure if it's a huge amount of extra value to have it in internal.
Is that the only thing that we're currently on the fence about? These module names?
I mean, I'm not the one to answer that.
I mean, for me, like I'm kind of like, because like yeah, I mostly still, because like I still like the this is not about PR but about design. Like still in the design, like most of the concrete examples about the value, like where the CVs and file and stuff like that, does refer to Helm. Like practically like all concrete examples refer to Helm, and Helm is only imported in CMCTL, which would be for which splitting it out would be a value, not just for this stuff but like for other stuff as well. And I think it's something that we should do anyway. So I'm just like, that is my main concern, because like there is a big change. I actually am not aware of any CVs that are such that would like, okay, we have like all these issuer SDKs and stuff like that, but I don't remember any CVs in them which would require bumping versions that are in dependencies that are unrelated to those. So like that is my main concern. Yes, is still that we are doing it it seems to be like largely the practical reasons. Only Helm, which would also be achieved by splitting out CMCTL, which we, I think, need to do anyway. So it feels like we are doing this work, but we anyway will still need to do that work, and that would actually seems like would solve our problem. But like I'm not against this, and I mean if you do the design, then the PR obviously makes sense as such.
I do see what you mean. Like I used Helm as an example a lot because it is by far the worst offender when it comes to this. But like with the controller today, like there are a lot of dependencies here that our controller has, and any of these could like break us or need patching in some specific way. Like I'm not just doing this because Helm is a pain to upgrade, although that is a large part of it. Part of the reason I'm doing this is because this gives us a lot of flexibility in the future around how we handle this. And if we do have to, like, I guess it comes down to like, if we have to patch client Go for some CVE which only affects the controller, and that brings in a raft of other changes, it'd be better to only do it in one place than do it everywhere. Or at least if it's not better, it's nice to have the option to do that, because I'm trying to give us options to respond to events that we can't control. Like Helm is a good example because they do upgrade other dependencies and break things, but like any of these dependencies can upgrade and break things, and the more we've split all this stuff out, the more control we have, and the less likely we are to have issues if down the road dependencies of different binaries start to clash. And like it's hard to come up with an example of what that looks like necessarily, but like if we have two binaries which depend on the AWS SDK, and like a shared dependency of one of those blows up or something, I guess it's about control as much as it's about like the day-to-day issue of like Helm, which is the one that usually shows up. But I do concede that Helm is like the main offender, and that removing a dependency on that would on its own be a valuable thing, and that this just kind of isolates it a bit more.
But so, like for example, in regard to Kubernetes libraries, I probably would expect that they will be like you mentioned, client Go. I would have found it weird if we had it at one version. I would rather have it at the same version in all components rather than it being at one version, one component, other version, other component.
I probably
Because
would.
we depend on them so heavily that it's just it would be hard to reason about the code otherwise. Like I find like, oh, yeah.
I probably would too, but the problem is that we might not necessarily have that same view, I think, if we are being forced to do it 9 months after a release came out. Like, if in 9 months we needed to patch Helm for something in CM-Cuttle, and like it also upgraded to client Go 27, then currently I think there would be a massive stink about the fact that that would also upgrade client Go for the controller, CA injector, core cert-manager package, everything would all get upgraded at the same time. Like, I feel like it's powerful if we can say just for CM-Cuttle, like we will just accept that there, which, like again, any dependency of ours can force us into that kind of situation where we have no good options. But this gives us the power to limit it more.
Yeah, I mean, it's just again that it was again like a CMCTL example, and I've not like again CMCTL is something that I think we should split out, and I am just not aware of, for example, something in AWS SDK that would I mean, it's possible that it would force us to upgrade something controller. I can't think of anything such.
Yeah, like that's the thing. Like, it's just there's so many ways that a dependency could break us, and like by having this control now, if that happens, we have more ways to respond to it and minimize the number of changes that we have to make.
It also becomes easier to reason about what components are affected by a CV, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you look at the Acme solver, the Go mod file of that, it will, like, you see directly what the dependencies are, right? And if the, like, it's very, I think it's very like it won't happen a lot that there's a vulnerability in here. And so to people who are using our product, it's easier to say, okay, this control is affected, this control is affected.
It's
Well,
very
that's only if they're Go developers and understand Go mod files. I mean,
no, it transfers across as well, right? Like at the moment, if you scan any cert-manager binary, then they're all built from the same Go mod, so could theoretically report a vulnerability that like existed in that Go mod. Not necessarily that it would, like we might not be using it in that particular binary, but like it could. Like, whereas in this world, they're all separate modules. So like if you scan Acme Solver, you're not going to see anything. If you scan CMCuddle, maybe you do, or the controller is probably a better example because it's got so many dependencies.
You think that will work? That, what's it called again? Artifactory will display that correctly?
Yeah, I think it will.
Yeah, that's great.
I think today it probably does a pretty good job of this already, but at least it is very clear then that exactly what could be affected, right? Like at the moment, our core Go mod file means it's just like, oh, you have to go looking, like go see if anything's affected. Whereas in like here, we can very much clearly say like, oh, in Acme Solver, a client Go vulnerability is not a concern. Oh well, no, it is. That's not a great example, but this has a different vulnerability profile to everything else, and it's very clear then.
okay, that's a good point. I think to some extent, obviously, because again, there's like the case where the actual code is not used and stuff like that. But yeah, it like scopes it down a bit more, right?
Yeah.
Just out of interest, like, did you look at any other projects that like have this kind of approach or do something similar for like LTS support, or like how do they do replaces, for example, or stuff like that?
I haven't dug into it much now. I came at it more from looking at what options Go gives us and then trying to apply them as seemed best. I did link to a very helpful Stack Overflow thing in here somewhere. That
I saw that. Yeah, it was a really good, useful discussion. Thank you.
This one, yeah. But yeah, like I don't know. Like Kubernetes' approach to this is like crazy mental because they had to solve this kind of problem before they had the option of Go modules to help them. So they've got all kinds of mirroring going on, and like it's not really instructive because we're never going to do that.
So what do? They mirror the staging folder to different Git repositories, and then they remove the replace statements and like set a version in the Go mod file.
I can't really explain how it works. Like it's just there's a lot that goes on, and like I'm not criticizing them. Like they didn't have much in the way of choice when they were doing this because Go modules weren't even a thing as far as back then. But we do seem to have a choice.
The thing that I like about this approach is that we don't have any replace statements in the roots Go mod file. So like normally no one should be broken if they just import the root and all the folders or all the subfolders of the root that aren't separate modules. That should all still work.
Yeah, like I like that this takes a lot of dependencies out of the root. This makes it very easy. This is an actual feature for anyone importing cert-manager. Like if you're importing cert-manager for the APIs, like you simply don't have any reference to Cloudflare Go in your dependencies anymore. Like that's powerful. Like again, like getting rid of all the rest of these that are cloud vendor specific is also powerful, because most people who are actually importing cert-managers just want package/APIs and they don't need anything else. And the dependencies of those packages is actually minimal. But yeah, like as to the replace statements, there actually are two. And I think, like, I don't really know if this one's done yet. I didn't look into it, but this one just like the fact that this is here without a comment explaining why it's here, like, is scary to me, and just like I want to kill it. Like, this is not ideal.
Well,
Pretty sure that
I
can
think
be
if you-
removed.
Well, I think if you upgrade it, it will tell you why it won't work. It's something with like a certain algorithm, like that's not supported anymore. I think
Yeah,
it's
but we
MD5 or
fixed
something.
it somehow.
Okay.
We made some kind of fix, but for some reason this replies. I'm pretty sure this is leftover from. But anyway, it's not related discussion.
Yeah, what is related to the discussion is that this is an interesting thought for, like, what we probably want is, if we're replacing this in one place, we would want every other module in the repo to also have this replace statement. Like,
Yeah.
so that we're not only replacing it in core and we're not like getting clashes in the binaries or anything. And I think that's achievable. Like, it should be easy to build a little script that will verify that stuff, and also verify that, for example, this is the import for cert-manager in any place that imports it in our repo, because it should be this. It should look exactly like this everywhere, and it should have this replacement.
Yeah, these replacements in the root Go mod file, currently they won't do anything, right? Because the root Go mod file is not used to build any binaries.
Yeah,
So they kind of have to be moved to all the CMD folders.
they would affect tests, I guess. But
Right.
it's maybe worse that it only affects tests and doesn't affect the binaries. But yeah, it's a very fair point. Like, it should be mirrored on all the binaries if that dependency is used. This should probably be marked as work in progress, because I know that I have to build that tool. Like, I'm not going to submit this PR without something that will check that the replace statements are saying. In any case, like, my aim here was to present it and get it in front of people and have a chance for people to ask questions. And we've also done that on video, so people can watch back and enjoy the fun.
It is a bit hard, I think, to fully grasp the effects of this change without actually doing it.
Yeah, I think if we merge this and then try and update some of our repos to point at the latest version of cert-manager, we'll very quickly find out if this was a mistake or not.
Yeah. All right, yeah. But generally, I think it's quite impressive, and it will help us to become a bit more, how do you say that? Like, it's kind of splits up everything, gives us more material to work with, I think.
And in 2 weeks' time, I'll be here talking about the core issuers proposal.
Indeed.
Which I don't actually think I will, but... Well, you've heard enough from me talking about our award-winning hackathon project.
I'll stop the recording